Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Joseph Smith Matthew, starting in verse 18. For then in those days shall be great tribulation on the Jews and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem, such as what was not before sent upon Israel of God since the beginning of their kingdom until this time. No, nor ever shall be sent again upon Israel. All things which have befallen them are only the beginning of the sorrows which shall come upon them. And except those days should be shortened, there should none of their flesh be saved for the elect's sake, according to the covenant, those days shall be shortened. Times of Israel. Was Hamas's attack on Saturday the bloodiest day for Jews since the Holocaust? So in this video, we're going to look at some of the numbers, including, yes, the 1,290 that everybody has been commenting about over the last couple days. So we're going to look into that. We're also going to look at the earthquake that happened in Afghanistan. But the bulk of the video, I want to focus on this idea of his work being cut short, hastened, days being shortened, because I think that that might be applicable to what's going on right now. So before we get into anything, let me just pull this up. I don't even have it zoomed in. I haven't updated the Flood the Earth challenge. I've been really busy these last few days, just keeping an eye on what's going on in Israel, just trying to take it all in, process it. So I haven't had much time to update this. So the last time that I updated it, just a couple days before the war began, we were at 6,920 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared, which means that we're getting close to 7,000. So consider sharing more, or if you haven't joined the challenge yet, consider joining. Just leave a comment in any video or send me an email and include the word flood, ideally hashtag flood. It helps me find your comments in your emails, and please keep them short. Okay, so let's go ahead. Oh, and really quick, just another little bit of housekeeping for the channel. One thing that I keep getting confronted with since the beginning of this channel is people's comments being deleted. I do not individually delete comments. I don't do it. There's only one thing that I do. If there's someone that's being rude, condescending, they're being belligerent, they're getting personal, then I block them, and that's it. But I do not delete individual comments. But YouTube does. So they'll delete your comment. Typically, if you try and share like a link, sometimes they get through, sometimes they don't. I don't know how it works. Other times, for whatever reason, their algorithm sends some comments here to this section called Held for Review, in which I have to go through and one by one approve every single comment, which I haven't done for a while. So if your comments are not showing up or it seems like they're being deleted, just know that I do not delete individual comments, and I'll try and get to the Held for Review as soon as I can. So I apologize for that. It's YouTube, and it's part of YouTube's efforts to, crack down on spam, but also potentially, hateful content or, just bad comments, so that violate guidelines and stuff like that. All right, but back to this. Times of Israel. Was Hamas's attack on Saturday the bloodiest day for Jews since the Holocaust? Along with comparisons to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, the claim that it was the darkest day in Jewish history since the end of the Holocaust appears to be accurate. Wow. So this gives you just more understanding of the scale of this event that we're going through right now, this war. It's not like all the other ones before. As the death toll from Saturday's attack on Israel has mounted, Israelis and Jews around the world have reached for analogies to explain the magnitude of the tragedy, calling the invasion Israel's 9/11 or Israel's Pearl Harbor. Others have tried to put the death toll, now at 700 soldiers and civilians, in perspective by setting it against a far deadlier tragedy, the Holocaust. Quote, "Not since the Holocaust has this large a number of Jews been killed in a single day." Let that sink in. End quote. Read an Instagram post from Daniela Greenbaum, a former producer for The View. Greenbaum added, I have no words. My heart is broken. My soul is aflame. Alon Levy, I think it's Levy, a former spokesperson for Israeli President Isaac Herzog, posted online, quote, it's no exaggeration to say yesterday was the darkest day in Jewish history since the end of the Holocaust. End quote. Lazar Berman, the Times of Israel's diplomatic correspondent, made the same reference. Quote, October 7th, 2023 saw the most Jews slaughtered in a single day since the Holocaust. End quote. The claim appears to be accurate. There have been bloody days in Israel's history and for Jews around the world since 1945, but none has had a civilian death toll this high. Israeli wars have had higher casualty totals overall, but none has seen this many civilians murdered in a single day. That's the key to this whole thing, in a single day. Later in the article, I wanted to point this out. In more recent memory, Israelis approximate that 1,000 people died in the terror attacks of the Second Intifada, a period that is traditionally counted from late the year 2000 to mid 2005. So me speaking now. So that's kind of different, isn't it? We're only a couple days into this, and comparing that to the Second Intifada that took place over like 5-6 years. The deadliest single bombing of that Intifada was an attack on the Park Hotel in Netanya, which, like Saturday's assault, came on a Jewish holiday. In that case, Passover. 30 people were killed in that attack. Large-scale murders of Jews have also happened outside of Israel since 1945, though with smaller death tolls than Saturday's attack. In 1946, a pogrom in Kielce, Poland, killed at least 42 Jews. The bombing of the AMIA Jewish Center in Buenos Aires in 1994, which the American Jewish Committee called, quote, the deadliest anti-Semitic attack outside Israel since the Holocaust, killed 85 people. By contrast, while the figures are still being tallied, it's clear that at least several hundred Israeli civilians were killed on Saturday, in addition to soldiers. Yeah, and that's the thing. It says right here, it's still being tallied. We don't even know the final numbers yet. It's still too soon to say. But I went ahead and I've updated my Israeli conflict tracker, where I've attempted to capture all the different wars and the intifadas and major conflicts and all the death tolls. And I've added this most recent one with the numbers that are available right now. I'm recording this on Monday. So the last that I've seen is that between soldiers and civilians, because they haven't sorted this out yet, so I'm just going to put it under the civilian column right here, 900. Okay, about 900. I've seen some people saying 1,000, but it seems like the consensus is 900 so far have died on the Israeli side. And then with the Palestinian, it's a little bit more confusing. It seems that from the airstrikes and attacks on Gaza from the IDF, there have been 687 killed. And then on top of that, if I'm reading all these articles correctly, on top of that, an additional 1,500 from the terrorists that came into Israel, that like did that invasion, that incursion into Israel and into all these different communities. So if that's correct, then the Palestinian side stands at about 2,187, which when you go back in time, 2014 saw a similar amount of Palestinians that died, but you'd have to go back to the Second Intifada, which was more like about 5,000. And then before that, the First Lebanon War. And then before that, you have to go all the way back to geez, you have to go all the way back to 1949. So as of right now, and we're only at the very beginning of this, it would seem. It's already comparable to the worst conflicts that we have here on this spreadsheet in Israel's history. That's how bad this is. And then on the Israeli side, it definitely, I think, not much has changed since the last time that we talked about it, but yeah, it seems that you would have to go back to the Yom Kippur War to see a death toll this high from any conflicts. So, and I remind you, that was 50 years ago. The Yom Kippur War, that was 50 years ago. I was not even born yet. So this is really, truly extraordinary what's happening here. Like I said in the last video, there has been some back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah. It's yet to be seen if they're going to join in the war. Maybe by the time that I post this on Tuesday morning, maybe by that point, Hezbollah will already be in it. I don't know. Things are developing really quickly. But I don't think that we're anywhere near done with this. And at the point that I'm recording this, the ground invasion of Gaza hasn't even started yet. And of course, that's going to drive the numbers up on both sides, because undoubtedly there's going to be Israeli military personnel that are killed during that, as well as, of course, Palestinians. So, yeah, this is really bad. This is really, really bad. So let's put a pin in that for right now. We're going to talk about cutting his work short and shortening the days for the elect's sake. We're going to save that for later in the video. But right now, I just want to bring up this earthquake that happened in Afghanistan. So this was only kind of on my radar. I wasn't paying much attention to it because I was so focused on Israel. But this is from Al Jazeera. Powerful earthquake kills 2,053 people in Afghanistan. All right. And then there's another article from the Guardian. This is like another one of those things where it's hard to get the death toll. I think because it's too soon. But according to the Guardian, it's actually close to 3,000 that have been killed. So I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of earthquakes, and I've updated it. I've updated it based on Wikipedia because that's just the easiest way for me to keep track of this. Wikipedia has all these pages where they keep track of earthquakes by year. And so I went with their numbers, which they were putting, close to 3,000. So that's what I did. So as far as the total death toll for the year for 2023, before this earthquake, I had it was like 61,500 or something like that. But adding this new number, it's brought it up to 65,064. It doesn't change its rank as far as deadliest year for earthquakes. 2023 is still at the number 5 spot. That goes back to 1985 because I don't have anything beyond 1985. So since 1985, this year is the 5th deadliest year for earthquakes. What's interesting is that last year, the deadliest earthquake that we're looking at right here, 1,163 people, that was also in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan has been devastated by earthquakes, both last year and this year. I have that, let's see, I have it pulled up here. So here's the article that I'm referring to where I'm getting my information. And it has this first table that is earthquakes by death toll. So yeah, just as a reminder, we had the most deadly one this year. That was in Turkey. That's the one that caused that Mount of Olives to split in Turkey. And then there's the one in Morocco that happened the day before President Nelson turned 99. And now we have this one in Afghanistan. And guess what? It happened on October 7th, the day that the war started. So I don't know, but that's just the fact of the matter. It happened the day that the war started. And then there's been a few other deadly earthquakes, one in Afghanistan, another one in Ecuador, and another one in Turkey. but they had far less deaths with those three. But I have this all added up, and all this adds up to, like I said, 65,064. And we're not done with the year yet. It's only still pretty much the beginning of October, so there's still time, and we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. Like I always say, I just what else is going to happen? Gosh, what else is going to happen this year? This has been a crazy year. I can't believe that this is happening in Israel. It's insane. Okay, so along with that earthquake in Afghanistan, apparently there were 2 other earthquakes that happened around the same time. According to Euro Weekly News, global tremors, 3 earthquakes in 3 hours. So let's see, we got a 6.3 that hit Mexico, and then Afghanistan was a 5.6, and then Papua New Guinea was a 6.7. So all 3 of those within 3 hours of each other, which catches my attention a little bit, just because it seems like there's a lot of things that are happening in threes lately. We've had those 3 separate days where we've had 3 asteroids pass by Earth. The first one was the week before Rosh Hashanah. Or wait, no, how did it go? Sorry, let me pull it up really quick. I should have done this. I should have pulled this up before, but I wasn't really thinking about it. All right, let's go to timeline, second coming, go back to 2022. Okay, so go back to September. Okay, so on September 20th of 2022, 3 asteroids passed by Earth. Yeah, 1 week before Rosh Hashanah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. And then a couple months later, and on Christmas Day, which in that year, it was also the 8th day of Hanukkah, the last day of lighting the menorah, there were 3 giant asteroids that passed by Earth on that day. And then, as if that wasn't bizarre enough, this year on Yom Kippur, the 25th of September, there were 3 asteroids that passed by Earth on Yom Kippur. Very strange. And this is a week after we had these 3 temples that were dedicated the first time in church history. So now, on the 7th, the day of the war, 3 earthquakes all around the same time. So, okay, whatever. Let's move on. All right, I wanted to point out really quick, because I was thinking about this. So as we're thinking about this war and how this could be it, this may be the actual Battle of Armageddon. We're just going to have to wait and see. But if it is, maybe there's a reason why they chose Second Coming artwork for this conference. I don't know who makes that selection. Maybe they didn't know that the Second Coming is going to happen after this conference, and we don't know yet, but it'd be interesting if they were inspired, because it is going to be the Second Coming soon. I would imagine that any of this artwork would maybe be approved by the first presidency, because imagery and appearance and stuff, it's important to organizations, including our church. So I don't know. If you know, let me know. But I went through and I was like, you know what, have there been any other years that have had the Second Coming as their, imagery for that conference? So I kind of looked through here, and I don't know if some of these pictures were chosen after these conferences, because maybe before recent times, they didn't really have a main image for conference like they do now. But whatever the case, at least according to the church website and how they have pictures selected, I went through everything that's on the church website, all these different general conferences, and this is the only one that has the Second Coming as its artwork. Here in the 90s, you had a couple times of Christ coming to the people of the Book of Mormon and 3rd Nephi. In fact, that was there there's at least 3 times that I just saw. Oh, here's a 4th. But yeah, none of them do. I'm not going to go through all of them. Just believe me, you can go verify it yourself if you want. This is the only conference where we've had this imagery associated with this conference. So just putting that out there. Now, Daniel chapter 12. Okay, it should be no secret to you, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, I'm not into the numbers. And it's not because I think that they're dumb or not relevant or anything. It's not because of my own opinion. It's based on what I have studied during the course of this channel. I've been doing it for 2 years now. So I'm going to get into this and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. There could be something to this. I don't know. So what happened, you guys, is that, okay, so the war started on the 7th of October. And somebody realized, I don't know if it was like another YouTuber or a podcaster or somebody else, or I don't know how this got so popular so quick, but it seems to have come from like one source. Somebody realized that from the time that the temples were closed. Okay, so here's the first presidency message back in 2020. First presidency temporarily closes all temples. And then it says after March 25th. So March 25th was going to be the last day that temples were open. And so when you put that in the calculator here, this is on time and date, it calculates how many days between two given dates. And so from March 26th until the 7th of October this year, it has been exactly 1,290 days. Okay. So this includes March 26th, like as the first day. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it does not include, the 7th of October. So the days including March 26th until the day before the war started, those altogether is 1,290 days. So 1,290 days went by since the temple was closed. And then the next day, that's when you have the war that started. Now, this number right here, 1,290, this is a number that can be found in Daniel in chapter 12. And it's a short chapter, so I'd like to read it and then read what it says in the Institute Student Manual. Chapter 12. In the last days, Michael will deliver Israel from their troubles. Daniel tells of 2 resurrections. The wise will know the times and meanings of his visions. At that time shall Michael stand up, and we all know that that's Adam. That's Adam's pre-mortal name, Michael. And at that time Michael shall stand, And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So already right off the bat, it kind of sounds like, potentially what's going on right now, if this is the final war. It sounds like, we know that Armageddon is going to be really, really bad. A lot of people are going to die. And it's going to be worse than anything before. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars are the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other 2, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. So what's going on is he's having a vision, and at first he sees a man dressed in white, basically above the river, and we know that that's Christ, or it represents Christ. Now at this point, and by the way, this is the last chapter of the book of Daniel. Now at this point of the vision, now there's 2 people that appear, one on this side of the river where he's standing and one on the other side. Okay. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. Biblical scholars agree that this means 3.5. When you say time, times, and half, it's 3 for whatever reason. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time, now this is the key part here, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Okay, 1,290 days. This is the number that we just looked at. This is from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away. And so many people nowadays interpret that to mean, like in the church that are into these things, point to the temple being the taking away of the sacrifice. And so if there ever was a time in this dispensation when the quote unquote sacrifice was taken away, yeah, it probably would be when the temples were closed. There hasn't been a time like that where all temples worldwide were closed. So yeah, I think that might be a good candidate. And then it says, "In the abomination which maketh desolate set up." Now, this is in reference, whenever we're talking about the abomination of desolation, that refers to the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? That means the destruction of Jerusalem. Look it up in the Bible dictionary. I should have pulled it up, but then this video would just go too long. It's the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, in a sense, you could say, if we're talking about spiritual Jerusalem, if we're talking about the church and the work of gathering Israel on this side of the veil and on that side of the veil, then when the temples were closed and missionaries brought back, that was in a sense a abomination of desolation, as far as like stopping the work of God for a period of time, which he allowed to happen, of course. But I don't know. This could either be talking about a spiritual abomination of desolation, or it may just be talking about when Israel is destroyed. I'm going to show you what it says in the student manual. Let's continue. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,330, the 1,305 and 30 days. So that's 1,335 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. All right. So if we were to go forward with this idea, 1,335 days after the temples were closed would bring us to November 21st of this year. So it might be something to keep in mind. I wouldn't hang my hat on it or hold my breath, but just keep that in mind. November 21st. And I checked the calendar. It doesn't seem that there's anything special that day. It's not like it's Thanksgiving in the United States or anything like that. And there's no Jewish holidays. For the Hebrew year, the holidays are over as far as like the solar year goes. The fall feast are over because we're now past the Feast of Tabernacles. So anyway, November 21st. Now, let's see what it says in the student manual. It says, some have used Daniel 12:1, which says that this would be a time of trouble, such as had never been before. Oh my gosh. Some have used Daniel 12:1, which says that this would be a time of trouble, such as had never before been seen, to mean the Battle of Armageddon. The language of this verse is reminiscent of Joel 2, verse 2. Let's read that. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. and Revelation 16:18. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. Okay. So the language of these verses are reminiscent of what is said in Daniel 12:1, which are prophecies of Armageddon. The Savior, however, specifically applied Daniel 12:1 to the fall of Judah in the year 70 AD. In Joseph Smith Matthew 1, verse 18. Let's read that. For then in those days shall be great tribulation on the Jews and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem, such as was not before sent upon Israel of God, since the beginning of their kingdom until this time, no, nor ever shall be sent again upon Israel. So that's kind of interesting. The Joseph Smith Matthew, according to this, is referring to when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. Okay, the Romans. Anyway, further, the Doctrine and Covenants describes Michael as leading the armies of God after the millennium. I'm not going to read that scripture, but you know that Michael and his angels are going to fight against Satan and his host in the Gog and Magog after the 1,000 years are over. Others have noted that the persecution of the Jews under Antiochus was the most deliberate and savage of their history to that point, which is correct. Were these terrible times fulfilled in 166 BC or 70 AD, or are they yet future, either before the millennium in Armageddon or afterwards? Given the dualistic nature of prophecy in the Old Testament, it is very possible that all four answers are correct. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind whenever we're reading anything like this. The dualistic nature of prophecy. So we don't really know. I do find it very coincidental that that's how much time has passed between the time that the temples were closed and the beginning of this war. Again, I'm not going to hang my hat on it, but I am definitely going to take note. But we don't know for sure. Continuing, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? Verses 7 through 13. The interpretation of the time periods mentioned in these verses has not been revealed by the Lord as yet. Numerous calculations and formulas have been put forward, each in their turn to be proven wrong. William Miller, a founder of the Adventist movement, predicted Christ coming in 1844, which prediction Joseph Smith declared to be false. And we're going to read that in just a minute. Miller's calculations came from an interpretation of this passage in Daniel. Time and time again, people have thought they had the key and enticed others to believe, only to reap disappointment. Even today, there are those who predict earthquakes and great calamities occurring on specific dates based on this passage in Daniel, and sadly, they still entice others to believe and follow. The prophet Joseph Smith said that if the Lord did not give the key for interpreting a symbol or image he employed, he would not hold his children responsible for it. For reasons not at present known, the Lord has not revealed the key for interpreting this passage, and until he does, speculation and calculation are pointless. Which I tend to agree with. I do, because, like I said, of all the things that I've already studied, like this from Joseph Smith himself. This is from Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 341. And to give you some background, okay, so you had this Father Miller, William Miller, who became really popular. He put together a really popular timeline. It says here, the Millerites were the followers of the teachings of William Miller, who in 1831 first shared publicly his belief that the second advent of Jesus Christ would occur in roughly the year 1843 to 1844. Coming during the Second Great Awakening, his teachings were spread widely and grew in popularity, which led to the event known... This always cracks me up. Sorry. Which led to the event known as the Great Disappointment. There's a link for it. The Great Disappointment. Okay, so you go down here and it shows, one of these timelines. There's always these timelines that people put together, and it's fine. It's people doing their best, without any bitter knowledge. The one that I have a big problem with is the 70 weeks of Daniel, which is found a couple chapters before what we just read. I think it's in chapter 9, where it's a prophecy that has to do with the time in which the Jews would return to Jerusalem and rebuild Jerusalem. Okay, so they were in captivity in Babylon, right? And then after that, the Persians allowed them to go back and rebuild Jerusalem, and the temple was rebuilt. And then the Messiah was cut off, because that's how it reads in the scripture. The Messiah would be cut off, and we know that that was his crucifixion. He was cut off. So it talks about the 70 quote unquote weeks, which basically what that means is that, like each, I can't remember how it goes. I think each week is 7 years. Okay, so 7 years times 70. Yeah, that's right. 490 years. So that was like the time frame that the Lord revealed to Daniel, in which the return from Babylon would take place. And at the end, Christ would be cut off, he would be crucified, and then there'd be a short time after that. For some reason, people take that last week from these first 69 weeks, and they say that it has to do with 2,000 years later, like our time right now, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, I'm not going to go into that more, because I've already done videos about this. I've done so many videos about these different concepts. That's why I don't go along with it, because I feel like I've seen enough to say that it's not right most of the time. Although in this case, maybe it could be. I'm not going to say that it can't. But if you want to know more about the 70 weeks of Daniel, I did a video 3 months ago about it called The 70 Weeks of Daniel Clearly Explained. So I would encourage you to watch that if that's something that you're into, because I don't think that it's correct. And I show you why. I show you exactly why. There's more to it than just that. Now, go to William Miller. So here, this is him right here. And he put together this timeline, which there's no shortage of these. There's no shortage of these if you do a Google search for 7-year tribulation and whatever. The 7-year tribulation is another doctrine that comes from these other Christian churches. It is not our doctrine. It's something that they contrive as they try and put together these numbers and come up with these calculations. And I'm not saying that people that do that are bad, but I think that it's misguided. And the reason why I think that is because of this. So let's go back to Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 341. So he talked about this. He talked about Father Miller in this prediction and this very timeline right here with all these numbers. Okay. So what did Joseph Smith say about it? He says, but I will take the responsibility upon myself to prophesy in the name of the Lord that Christ will not come this year, as Father Miller has prophesied. For we have seen the bow, meaning the rainbow. And I also prophesy in the name of the Lord that Christ will not come in 40 years. And if God ever spoke by my mouth, he will not come in that length of time. Brethren, when you go home, write it down, that it may be remembered. Jesus Christ never did reveal to any man the precise time that he would come. Go and read the scriptures, and you cannot find anything that specifies the exact hour when he would come. And all that say so are false teachers. And I think that, with what he's saying here, I really think that he did not agree with these kind of calculations and these timelines. Not to say that the numbers aren't meaningless, but as we have also studied before, like in this video right here called 3.5 in Jewish numerology, we have learned that numbers used in the scriptures a lot of times are symbolic. They carry a symbolic meaning. So I would encourage you to watch this playlist called Symbolism, this one called 7-Year Tribulation. I also have one for the book of Revelation, one for the book of Daniel, all these different things. So that's what I think about this. I think that it's very interesting. I don't tend to think in terms of coincidences, so this really could mean something, but just like everything else, we're just going to have to wait and see. I think it's really neat. I hope this is what that prophecy is referring to, but I'm not going to have a too strong of an opinion about it, at least not at this time. And then if something does happen in November, then that would be incredible, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I thank everybody for sending me these comments, because I would not have picked up on this on my own, because I'm not really into these numbers, but I think that it's worth noting. So let's go back here. So we just read that Joseph Smith Matthew, the part that we're about to read, has to do with Christ's warning that Jerusalem was about to be destroyed. Okay, in 70 AD, that destruction, not the last days, but that destruction. If we go up to the chapter heading, it says, Jesus foretells the impending destruction of Jerusalem. He also discourses on the second coming of the Son of Man and the destruction of the wicked. And I think sometimes when people read this, they only assume that this has to do with the second coming, Armageddon, the destruction of Jerusalem at the time that Christ comes to save the Jews. And for all I know, maybe there's dualism here too. There might be. So let's read it again in both contexts, thinking about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD and potentially this upcoming abomination of desolation on Jerusalem in the last days. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet concerning the destruction of Jerusalem, then you shall stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them who are in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop flee, and not return to take anything out of his house. Neither let him who is in the field return back to take his clothes. Now, this is kind of interesting because if there is a dualism going on here, and this could apply to what's going on right now, it's really interesting because we had those people that were at the supernova festival. It was like a desert rave, like a dance thing that they were doing. And they were literally running in the field for their lives. And there was no time to turn back to get any belongings. All right, continuing. And woe unto them that are with child, and unto them that give suck in those days. Therefore pray ye the Lord that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then in those days shall be great tribulation on the Jews and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem, such as was not before sent upon Israel of God, since the beginning of their kingdom until this time. No, nor ever shall be sent again upon Israel. In all things which have befallen them are only the beginning of the sorrows which shall come upon them. And that is definitely true, because after they were driven out of Israel, they went into the diaspora, and they went through some really hard times throughout the world, especially in Europe, when you think about things like the Spanish Inquisition and all the persecution that they faced, and they still face it today as we speak. And except those days should be shortened, there should none of their flesh be saved. For the elect's sake, according to the covenant, those days shall be shortened. And that makes sense because there's prophecies that the Jews would be scattered throughout the world, but then in the last days they would return. So he couldn't allow the Romans to kill them all. He had to, keep his promise that he would preserve their seed until the last days. Now, could this be a dualistic prophecy? It could be. It could be. Let's look at a few other things, though. So D&C 52. So this is referring to our own day. Okay, so this cannot be taken to refer to the Jews at the time of Christ and the Romans. This is in D&C 52, verse 11. For thus saith the Lord, I will cut my work short in righteousness, for the days come that I will send forth judgment unto victory. Okay. Romans 9:28. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. D&C 88, verse 73. Behold, I will hasten my work in its time. So this makes me think about the fact that this last General Conference, one of the big themes was sending rescue parties, right? There was like this metaphor that was going on with comparing us to the times of the pioneers and sending rescue parties to help bring the last wagon and the last people safely into the Salt Lake Valley, which the metaphor would be us gathering scattered Israel, finding those that are last, that are going to join the church, working with those that are less active or inactive, bringing them back into the church, right? So you would think, well, that was like the big theme this last General Conference. So maybe there's still plenty of time. You know, Elder Uchtdorf talked about the prodigal son. So maybe there's still enough time for people to make a change and come back. And maybe there is, or maybe there's not. Even though they gave those talks, maybe the Lord is going to cut his work short. Or if there is any time, then there may be very, very little time with what we're seeing in Israel. Let's read what Elder Neal A. Maxwell said, April 1992 General Conference, in a talk called My Servant Joseph. Now, my brethren, these are your days in the history of the church. Mark well what kind of days they will be. Days when, with special visibility, the Lord will make bare his holy arm in the eyes of all nations. God will also hasten his work. He will also shorten the last days for the elect's sake. Hence, there will be a compression of events. Now here, Neal A. Maxwell, he's reading Matthew 24 in Joseph Smith Matthew as though it's talking about the last days. So it would seem that it's probably a dualistic prophecy talking about 70 AD as well as our own time. So, shorten the last days for the elect's sake. I think sometimes we always apply that to ourselves, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like those that are members of the church, forgetting that there are other people, namely the Jews, that are not yet part of the church, but they are still the elect according to their heritage and being descended in Israel through Judah and Levi and Benjamin and so forth. So, some of the other tribes, but mainly those three tribes. You know, so when we're thinking about Israel and this war that's going on, we don't know how it may or may not escalate. Maybe it'll escalate to the point of Armageddon, and Israel will be in real trouble, like really fast. What if they do convince other nations like Syria? What if Egypt decides that they want to get in on it? What if Jordan? I mean, I doubt it, but what if Jordan? What if like other countries decide to get in on it? What if Iran itself goes ahead and sends troops to Israel? I don't know like the logistics or like how easy that would be, but what if they do? If they do, and if Israel is met with like overwhelming force, then like it says here, the days will need to be shortened for the elect's sake, because we know that when Christ comes to the Jews, they're, you know, those that are not wicked, the ones that do not perish, the ones that continue on into the second coming, they are the elect. You know, they've just been deceived over these couple thousand years by their traditions, but they are going to accept Christ when he comes. And so to spare those people, then maybe he's going to have to cut things short as far as the war goes. So as the war ramps up, maybe it'll be cut short. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be like, okay, it's it. That's it. Here's the second coming. Okay, Elder Maxwell continues, furthermore, all things will be in commotion. Only those in the process of becoming the men and women of Christ will be able to keep their spiritual balance. Brethren, may we walk by faith, and if necessary, even on our knees. And then after that, I did a little search for cut his work short because I wanted to see how that was talked about in General Conference, how that phrase was used. So I have just a few more things I want to read, and then we'll wrap up. This is from Elder LeGrand Richards, April 1963, General Conference, the most important message. As we have listened to the announcements made by our worthy president in the various meetings of this conference as to the extent to which the proceedings of the conference are being broadcast into various missions and nations of the earth, we are impressed with the privilege we have of living in this day and age when the Lord is doing so much to cut his work short in righteousness. We were told in the newspaper the other night that there would be a possible potential listening audience of 90 million people to our conference. Some of us are old enough to have participated from this pulpit when we did not even have a public address system, when some of the brethren were with weak voices could hardly be heard under the gallery. Just think of the difference. So this is another interesting way to think about the work being cut short. He's referring to the fact that with new technology, the gospel can be broadcast much further than it could before. And this is in 1963. Now we have the internet, which is virtually available to almost everybody on earth, along with all the other things like radio, television, and then hard copies of church materials, not just the Book of Mormon, but church materials. I think it might shock us to find out just how many people have actually come in contact with the church. So again, because there's some people that think that, no, there's still all this like missionary work that has to happen. We have to go into every single country. And that's not what I've read from general authorities. They do not talk that way. They talk this way, like what he said in 1963. I have it's on a spreadsheet. I have a bunch of quotes that have to do with that, about the gospel going to every nation, kindred, and tongue. And this is how they talk about it. So again, prophecy can happen in a much more natural way, in an unexpected way than you might think when you read the scriptures. This one's from Hugh B. Brown, The Blessings of the Gospel, October 1955. Our Heavenly Father in order has said, as he said, to cut his work short in righteousness, has made available to us such improved facilities of travel and communication as would have been nothing short of miraculous in the days of Peter and Paul, or even to our pioneer fathers. Steamships and airplanes enable us to go farther in hours than they could have gone in months. Radio and television have amplified the voice and made it possible to take the gospel into the homes of the people of almost all nations. He's saying that in 1955. How much further do you think we've come today? And then the last one, this is from Erastus Snow, Journal of Discourses, volume 25, page 30, column B. The work before us is a great one, and very much remaineth to be accomplished according to the prophecies. Israel is to be gathered, Jerusalem rebuilt, Zion established, the vineyard of the Lord pruned, and the corrupt branches cut off and cast into the fire, while the good branches shall be grafted in and partake of the root and fatness of the tame olive tree. Now keep in mind, this is me talking, keep in mind he just said Jerusalem rebuilt, which it has been. It's been rebuilt. And then Zion established. This goes back to this idea that Missouri, Kansas City has to be destroyed, and then a brand new city, brand new streets and buildings have to be built, and then that's going to be New Jerusalem. Look what Erastus Snow says. There is a great work to be accomplished in this earth, but the Lord has said by the mouth of his servants that he will cut his work short in righteousness, in building up his kingdom in the latter days. True, when the Lord speaketh, he does not reckon time as we do. The time was in the infancy of this church when our minds were so narrow compared to what they are now, that we looked for the speedy coming of the Lord and the accomplishment of his great work before this time. But as our minds grew and our ideas enlarged, we began to perceive that we were only children in our views and feelings, our ideas and expectations. We had the views, ideas, and expectations of children, and we see how the Lord has enlarged Israel and expanded his work. And now we behold so much more to be accomplished than what has been accomplished, that we are apt in our minds to put off the day of the Lord a great way. Now remember though, this is Erastus Snow. This was back in 1884. Okay. The time was that we looked for one temple. The early revelations given to the Latter-day Saints predicted a temple in Zion. And Zion in our minds at that time was a little place on the Missouri River in Jackson County, western Missouri, a town and a few surrounding villages, or a country. Pre-adventure, it may be as large as a county. When we first heard the fullness of the gospel preached by the first elders and read the revelations given through the prophet Joseph Smith, our ideas of Zion were very limited. But as our minds began to grow and expand, we began to look upon Zion as a great people. Okay? A great people. And the stakes of Zion as numerous, and the area of the country to be inhabited by the people of Zion as this great American continent, or at least such portions of it as the Lord would consecrate for the gathering of his people. We ceased to set bounds to Zion and her stakes. We began also to cease to think about a single temple in one certain place. Seeing the different stakes of Zion, that they were being organized, we perceived the idea possibly as many temples. Having had one spot pointed out in the revelations for the temple in Jackson County, our minds expanded so that in a short time, we were building another temple in a stake of Zion in Kirtland, Ohio. A little while afterwards, we were laying the foundation of a temple in Far West, Missouri, and driven before our enemies. From that place, we next laid the foundation and built a temple unto the Lord in Nauvoo. When we located in the mountains and laid the foundation of a temple in Salt Lake City, who of us had an idea that before it should be completed, we would be administering in a temple in St. George, and another in Logan, and another in Manti? And who conceives the idea today that by the time these are completed and the saints have officiated in them, we will be scattered over the American continent, building temples in 100 other places? All this comes within the range of possibility, nay, probability, almost amounting to certainty. One of my brethren behind me here who understands these things and who can speak knowingly in regards to them says that we may put it down as a certainty, and that by and by there will be hundreds of these temples throughout the land. Our minds are beginning to comprehend the object and purpose of the temples of our God. So again, he's talking about what Zion really is, what New Jerusalem really is. And we do know that that temple will still be built in New Jerusalem in Independence, Missouri. It will. We've studied that ad nauseum. And in fact, they built the Independence Visitor Center to be one of the temples of the 24 temple complex. But New Jerusalem is the entire church. Zion is the entire church. And so all I'm trying to say is that a lot of these things, it would seem, have already happened, all these prophecies, in very natural ways. Okay? Not exciting to the senses. There aren't fireworks going off and nuclear bombs and stuff like that. Things have happened in a natural way. And what we're seeing in Israel right now also seems to be happening in a natural way. And for all we know, things may be over sooner than we might expect. I think that we should take into account these scriptures that keep saying that, you know, the days are going to be shortened and he's going to cut his work short. Because even now, I myself, I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably not going to happen next week. It could. If I were you, I would be ready. And that's what I'm going to do. Every single day, I'm going to be ready, especially with what we're seeing right now. Things could end very quick because he will cut his work short for the elect's sake. All right, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.